Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to IPFW's Mastodon Career Call webinars. We host these webinars once or twice a month and focus on needs of our students and alumni in terms of career development. And today's webinar is on resumes and what to include and not to include on those resumes. And Jennifer Beach was supposed to be our presenter today. However, she's running a little late, so I'm going to go ahead and start and present some of the information, and Jen might be joining me shortly. If she doesn't end up making it, what we'll do is go ahead and reschedule so that she can present the content, since I know most of you wanted to hear what she had to say and her perspective, since she is a recruiter over at Parkview. So I will go ahead and cover the content. Go ahead and type any questions that you have on the left side of the screen in the chat box, and I'll address those as we go. And before we start, I just wanted to say a real quick thanks to our sponsor, Quincy Recycle. And you can see the web links box on the bottom and browse to positions that they're hiring for. So let me go ahead and get started then. Okay. So Jen had a little bit of information about her experience, and again, she has 20 years of experience in recruiting, and we'll have her share more information if she makes it today. Today we're going to talk about resumes, of course, talking about the truth, basics of a resume. Jen actually created a resume checklist that I will go ahead and email out to everybody, and that way you have a copy, and it's kind of a nice checklist to make sure that you're covering exactly what you need on the resumes. We'll share some do's and don'ts. I'll share some examples of resumes that I've seen. I've been here at IPFW, and I'm the director of the Career Service Center, and I've had over 9 years of experience looking at resumes, so I've definitely seen some resumes that had some sticky situations and helped the student or alumni to fix that on their resume. We'll talk about how to handle job histories that are less than a year, talking about gaps in employment. What if you were fired for reasons you don't want to talk about? Do you still list this? And then I'll just have some closing comments and thoughts. Again, some of this content is from Jen's perspective, so I will give you my perspective, and then hopefully she'll join us here soon. If you are having audio problems, I would recommend that you log off and then log back into the meeting room, maybe with a different browser. But if your computer has audio capability, you should be able to hear me. And we will be recording this webinar so that you can view that on our YouTube channel at a later date. Okay, so let's go ahead and start talking about resumes. I always tell students and alumni that the purpose of a resume really is just to get an interview. You want to write that resume for a specific job, and you want to look at the qualifications, the requirements, the skills that they listed on that job posting, and you want to tailor that resume to that specific posting. So your whole goal is to get that phone to ring and for you to get an interview, not to get the job. So that means you have to tailor a resume every single time you send it out. You can't mass send out resumes to 100 employers and expect interviews. So I'm going to share some tips on how to really tailor that resume so that you can get that interview. A resume is only looked at by a recruiter for about 10 or 30 seconds, which doesn't seem fair, really. You spend tons and tons of time looking at this resume, and they're only going to spend 10 to 30 seconds on it. So you need to make sure that it's reader-friendly, concise, no errors. The formatting is really important. We actually do not recommend that you use those templates for a number of reasons. Really, you don't want an employer to look at it and just automatically know, wow, they used a template. You don't want that to be their first reaction. And then the second thing is templates. They're really challenging to update in terms of the formatting and the spaces, and it'll kind of just be more of a pain every time you go to update that, which again, you'll be updating your resume all the time, constantly. The other things that kind of help recruiters screen you out or make sure that they have a rubric and you're not really meeting up there with their expectations is if there's some employment gaps or you have numerous short-term positions, they're going to think maybe you're a job hopper. If they have a requirement of computer skills, for example, if they want you to know PowerPoint and Publisher and Adobe Reader or something like that, and you don't even have that on your resume, they may screen you out just because you didn't put that critical information on your resume. So you want to make sure, again, that you're writing that resume to the specific job posting. And again, errors, anytime you're misspelling things, it's basically a demonstration of your written communication skills and attention to detail. So if you have errors on your resume, you're automatically telling me right then and there that you may have errors on your your work performance kind of stuff. So basically, a well-prepared resume will definitely increase your chances of an interview as long as it's tailored and it speaks to the specific job posting. Okay, the basics, formatting. We say there's kind of 2 or 3 types of resumes depending on how you look at it. And for those of you that have the IPFW career guide, you can kind of follow along or stop by our office and pick one of these guides up. They're very helpful. They have some sample resumes in here. And it kind of goes over the difference between chronological and functional. So most people are very familiar with a chronological resume. It focuses on experience, and it typically highlights the most relevant job first, and then you work your way back. It allows you to highlight skills in a clean, kind of concise way. The functional resume is a little different in where you can highlight skills and accomplishments. We refer to them as doing a kind of a skills cluster, and where maybe you're trying to change careers. Maybe you're trying to go from the nonprofit world into sales. And even in your nonprofit job, you did do a little sales. Your whole resume just looks like social service. So a functional resume would really kind of help you highlight those skills that you did in your job and make it look like a totally different industry. And again, that's something that the staff here at IPFW Career Services could help you accomplish. Sometimes we just recommend a hybrid. You can start off your resume with a summary of qualifications section instead of that objective statement, and then highlight those skills that you're bringing to the table and then match those skills to the job description. Sometimes it's then putting the jobs in chronological order and then highlighting it in a way. So, kind of just varies from person to person depending on the education and work experience that person has had. Formatting-wise, you want to make use of good the white space, check your margins, be consistent with your font. We can tell when you copy and paste text in there and it doesn't match. I stick to the boring news, Time New Roman or Arial. They're easy on the eyes and reader-friendly. And of course, you don't want to go smaller than 10 and then bigger than 12. Definitely black font and using bold with your headers and job titles and employers kind of make it more reader-friendly. Jen says not to use italics. I typically like to put job titles in italics just to differentiate it a little bit. And again, at the end of the day, this is your resume and you want to make it your own. So I might have different opinions than Jen, and Jen may disagree with me on things. But at the end of the day, it's your resume, and you want to make sure it's speaking to what skills you have and education you have, and you want to make it your own. For example, if you're in, maybe you're a graphic designer, your resume, they definitely look a little different. The formatting, maybe the font color, because that's your field. So you can get a little bit more creative depending on your industry. So of course on your resume you'll need your basic personal information, your name, if you have a nickname, or let's say your name is Aaron and you're a girl and you spell it Aaron, and sometimes maybe people assume that you're not a girl with that spelling of that name. You could put MS period and then spell out Aaron and then your last name, and so that would maybe help. Nicknames, maiden names can go in parentheses. You definitely want to include your address, a phone number. Make sure your voicemail is appropriate. All those ringback tones and funny ways to answer your phone when you're job searching, you want to make sure it's professional. Same thing with your email address. I would recommend that you just use your IPFW student account or Gmail or Yahoo. But partygirl@yahoo.com is probably not the best email that you want to use for your resume situation. So you're not going to include information about marital status, age, religion, political affiliations. These are all legal questions that employers are not allowed to ask in an interview, and so you would not disclose those types of information on the resume. So just the basics. And then the other thing I would add with the basics is if you have a LinkedIn profile, there's a kind of a LinkedIn website specific to you that you could add to the heading of it. And again, employers would like to see that LinkedIn profile. And keep in mind that we are giving free LinkedIn profile pictures at the job fair coming up this spring on April 15th. So if you're a student, you can come to that job fair and get a LinkedIn profile picture. Okay, so an objective statement. Again, this is your resume and make it your own. I am definitely not the biggest fan of objective statements. My thought on objective statements is you should explain that objective in your cover letter. So yes, that means you have to write a cover letter. But if you do go ahead and have the objective statement, it is nice if you know the exact name of the position and the exact name of the employer. And then again, it makes the employer feel like you wrote that resume specifically for them. So it helps to identify your job target and direction, and kind of maybe like help focus on where you want to go and your vision, so your goal. So an example is an entry-level position in the staffing industry where background in advertising and public relations would be needed. So you gave me a specific position, or I guess just a general position, and then the specific industry, and then you're kind of highlighting that you have advertising and public relations skills. So another one would be an auditing position with a bank that offers the opportunity to use my expertise in real estate lending and financial management. So those are two pretty good examples. Again, I'm not the biggest fan of objective statements. I think they're pretty hard to write. And again, we don't recommend that you use first-person language. So on that second example where they said my expertise, we would recommend that you reformat that, not to use that first-person language. So just, again, there's all different kinds of opinions on resume writing. So this is actually what I do prefer, is the summary of qualifications section. So I would recommend just ditch the objective altogether and do a summary of qualifications. It definitely should be strong and convincing. This is your chance to capture their interest. This is your chance to really match up what they're looking for. So if they're looking for somebody that has X amount of years of experience in sales and is familiar with specific software and familiar with certain recruiting methods or whatever it is, you would tailor those 4 or 5 sentences to that job description so that the recruiter would say, check, 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 this person has the skills, let's bring him or her in for an interview. And again, remember, your goal is to get that interview. So you can say things like excellent at solving complex problems in a fast-paced environment, exceptional interpersonal skills, extremely committed to excellence. A lot of what we call transferable skills can be highlighted there. And again, you'd flip them out based on the job description. Excuse me. So it's a way to emphasize your qualifications, specialties, unique talents, any major accomplishments, unique selling points. So what's going to set you apart from other candidates really is what you're going to put up there. So I really, again, strongly recommend the summary of qualifications section. And we have quite a few examples in our career guide and on our website. So I'd encourage you to check those out. So you can read the example there. We'll move on. Okay, so the work experience, obviously you need to highlight that on the resume. If you're going with that chronological resume, then you're going to list the jobs in reverse chronological order. So you want to focus on the most recent and relevant jobs. We typically say that you don't go back, the furthest you go back is 10 years. Obviously pay attention to the requirements. And the reason why you wouldn't go back more than 10 years is because you don't want the employer to date you to figure out kind of your age. But you still want to be able to demonstrate that you have experience. So you can go back more than 10 years if you feel like that experience is relevant and you want to keep that on the resume. And here's where it gets a little sticky, and here's where the great thing about this webinar would be to help you, is that sometimes you can use terminology that says prior to 2004. And so that would be a job that you had prior to 10 years ago, but you still wanted it on your resume. So it'd be a way to put it on there but not really date yourself. So you want to use bullets, and you want to describe those using action verbs, power words, excuse me, and you want to put them either in present tense or past tense, depending on if you're no longer doing that job. So you created, you managed, you recruited, you planned, you organized. All those would be the words that you would start with to describe your job duties. A good tip too is to basically Google the job that you're writing about. So if you are currently have an internship at Do It Best or at Parkview Health, go on their careers website and read how they described their internship, and maybe you can use some of that verbiage and make it your own based on what you were able to do with that internship. So again, under work experience, you could include volunteer roles, and you would just include the word volunteer under your title. You would include any military service, internships, externships. So it's okay even if you weren't paid, but you don't want to oversell it. If it was only a couple-day externship, you don't want to oversell it. You want to give me a frame of reference of how long you were there with the dates. Education section definitely needs to be highlighted on the resume. And typically, if you're a recent student or a recent graduate and a current student, it's going to be at the top of your resume. So it'll probably go second behind that summary of qualifications section or that objective statement. And you're going to list the degree, so Bachelor of Science, Bachelor of Arts. And if you're an IPFW student, you're actually getting a degree from either Indiana University or you're getting it from Purdue University. So it won't be from IPFW and it won't be from Indiana University, Purdue University, Fort Wayne. It'll be one or the other based on the degree that you're getting. And then you'll want to talk about when you're getting the degree. You're not going to tell me that you're a sophomore, freshman, junior, senior. You're just going to tell me expected graduation date 2015. And so that lets me know that you're not graduating for another year. So you don't have to tell me that you've been here since 2000 working on this degree or whenever. Just tell me when you're getting that degree. And if you took courses or classes at, let's say, Ivy Tech or St. Francis or another school and you transferred here, you're only going to put the school and the degree that you intend to complete or where you intend to complete the degree at. So you wouldn't list any of those schools unless maybe you got an associate's degree from those schools. Let's see, you can put relevant coursework down there. That might be a way to kind of make your resume look a little bit more like your industry if you don't have a lot of relevant experience. You can put awards, honors, and it looks like Jennifer said here, awards can go a long way. So be specific if it's, what the achievement is, or honors. We also recommend that you put your GPA on there if it's above a 3.0. And again, that's a way to highlight your skills in the classroom on your resume. You can also figure out your major GPA on your resume, and that might be a little higher than your overall resume or overall GPA. Okay, so what else goes on there? You can add school or professional affiliations. So if you are involved in SHRM, the Society for Human Resource Management, let's say you're a member of that, or you're in the Accounting Society or Delta Sigma Pi. If you have a leadership role in any of those groups, you'd want to put the leadership title, the dates. Maybe if there was something specific you did for one of those student groups, then you can add that. You can add conferences, workshops, seminars, things that I term as professional development can go on there. And again, you want to make sure that you're tailoring it to the job description to make sure the resume is speaking to that job. So it might be another way to highlight that you're familiar with the industry because you've taken these classes, so the coursework, and then you're in all these groups. And maybe the job you have right now is just kind of paying the bills, but then you'd highlight the transferable skills that you're getting from that particular job in your summary of qualifications section. So again, sometimes it's tricky, but there's different ways to highlight the knowledge that you have of your industry on your resume. Hobbies and personal interest. Again, there's different opinions out there. I definitely do not recommend putting this on your resume. It looks like Jen said, when in doubt, leave it out. Be careful what hobbies you list. Maybe some of those hobbies could be to your disadvantage. Maybe some of them are a little bit more political affiliated or religiously affiliated, and it might strike against you. So my recommendation would be to leave it off. And again, just list those professional affiliations or student groups that you're in and what roles you have with those. I would also recommend other stuff to put on there, computer skills. I like a computer skills section, and tell me what specific software and programs that you have. And again, if I'm just looking for a candidate that has a certain computer knowledge based, if I want somebody that's proficient in Microsoft Excel and I see it on their resume, then you're going to score high on my rubric, and maybe you'll rise to the top of my list of people to call for an interview. So I would definitely add that to the list of things that you can add on there. It used to be that at the bottom of your resume you would close it by saying references available upon request. In my opinion, and again, everybody has a different opinion, this is sort of a waste of space. Of course, you're going to give them to me if I'm the recruiter, if I request them. So we actually say that the reference page should be a separate document using the same heading that you have on your resume, and so it just kind of complement the look and feel of the resume. Typically, your references would be 3 to 4 students, or 3 to 4 professional references. So these could be professors, advisors, mentors, anybody that can talk about your skills or abilities or knowledge. So you want to list those and give the employer as much information as you can in terms of phone number and email so that they can reach out to them easily. The other thing is, and then this is just a tip because I've been a reference many times, is give your references a heads up. Ask them to be a reference, and then when they say yes, email them a copy of your resume just to kind of give them a refresher of all the great things that you've done and accomplished. It might help them when they get that phone call to give you a better reference because maybe they didn't know you were in the Accounting Society or Delta Sigma Pi. Maybe they had forgotten all the classes that you had taken or some of the things that you accomplished. And so it kind of gives them a reference to be a better reference for you. And then, of course, once you get the job or you get the interview, keep in touch with them, keep them updated, and thank them for their time, and let them know, hey, I finally got the job. Thank you so much for the reference, because it'll come around full circle. You might need them again depending on your job search situation. Okay, so this is the checklist that Jen created that I'd be happy to email out to everyone to make sure that you're covering these things on your resume. And again, feel free to make an appointment with any of the career counselors here at our department. We're over in Kettler 109, and we also have drop-in hours from 10 to 2 every day. So you can come on in with your resume, and we'll kind of go over some of this stuff with you to get that resume where you want it. And then we also actually have a way for you to submit your resume through JobZone for an online virtual resume critique. So if you're a student or alumni, you can log on to JobZone and just submit your resume right there, and virtually we'll critique that for you and go back and forth. So, so it looks like Jen wants you to make sure that you have these things on your resume. But the formatting is standard and easily readable. Clean, crisp fonts. Again, this is your first impression to the employer. So right off the bat, you want to make a good first impression, reader-friendly, error-free, and just a way to highlight those skills. You want to save it in a Microsoft Word format. You want to make sure that it's not in the .docx or PDF. We actually sometimes will recommend that if you're applying through some of those kind of systems, like a Taleo system or like electronic screening some of the larger company has, that maybe you could flip it into a PDF. That way the content looks exactly how you want it to look. Most people have an Adobe version to read PDF, so you would be safe. So if you're filling out the content in those big systems, and it's asking for you to type in every job and all your job duties, you're going to want to type that information in. You can't just put C resume. So again, if they don't have the Adobe Reader, they would still be able to get the content that you typed in. But I say it's okay to flip it to a PDF. Again, make sure your contact information is up to date and professional. That the information is in chronological order, or you can use different categories to kind of break up those jobs. The bullet points are, again, what helps make it reader-friendly and show what skills were used and what you accomplished at each place. Those bullet points really should answer, what and why, and if you can, kind of use a way to quantify things. So, how many recruiters or how many volunteers did you recruit? How many people do you supervise? So it kind of gives a reference of the level of supervision or the level of experience or that you were handling at those jobs. So showcasing accomplishments using supported data. So, you saw an increase in sales by 20%. Within the first 6 months of your position. That kind of data can kind of set you apart from other candidates. Excuse me, I'm kind of fighting a cold here, so bear with me. Let's see what else. You want information, markets, background, experience, education, and skills. Of course, all that goes on there. Definitely using action verbs, power words to detail the skills and accomplishments. And again, you want to make sure that they're in present tense if you're still doing the job, or past tense. I can't stress enough, go back to that job description of that job that you're looking to get, and use the keywords or the language found in that job description. Match it up. Make them see that you're the ideal candidate and you understand the language and the requirements of the job. So that's going to be your best bet. You want to avoid first-person pronouns. So again, the I, me, the, etc. You want to avoid personal details that have no connection to the position. So that marital status, family information, political affiliations. You don't want to include a picture of yourself. You don't want to put, funny graphics on there or something that doesn't look clean and professional. Again, really the only industry that can get away with that maybe is more art related or design related. If you end up printing out your resume, let's say for our job fair coming up on April 15th, you want to print it on cardstock, kind of heavier paper, resume paper, just on a nice clean white or off-white paper. You don't want it to be on pink paper or perfume or anything like that. All those things are going to have you stand out for wrong reasons. So you just want to make it look really professional and make a good first impression. Your resume really should answer the question, why should someone hire you? And it should make sense to the recruiter why you're applying. The last couple of weeks I've worked with students on resumes and I've looked at it and they told me the job they're applying for, and it took me probably 5 minutes to figure out, wow, yeah, this person does have the skills and the experience to do this particular job well, but nowhere on the resume is it really highlighting that. And so sometimes it's really nice just to sit down and talk to somebody about, hey, I do have this experience and I just don't know how to present it on this document. And then, I do ask them, why should someone hire you for this job? And as they're talking to me in the resume critique appointment, I'm able to kind of sift that information from the resume and reformat it in a way where then the recruiter would look at it and say, yep, that's my ideal candidate right there. And again, you'd get that phone call for that interview. Contains no inconsistencies or errors, of course. And you don't want to exaggerate on your resume. It'll definitely come back to hurt you. So if they want somebody that is fluent in a language, maybe they want somebody fluent in Spanish, and you can sort of know Spanish a little bit, you don't want to oversell that skill because that actually might come back to hurt you if you actually get the job. So, maybe you could say conversant in Spanish and not fluent. Same thing with computer skills. You can use the terminology proficient in Microsoft Excel, or you can just say familiar with Microsoft Excel. So there's a couple of different ways to make sure that you're not exaggerating, and you definitely don't want to lie on the resume. So just make sure that that resume is speaking to your skills that you have. So a couple more do's and don'ts. Know your skills and the job you're applying for. Have a direction. I always tell students that they need to have like a hit list, things that they really want to talk about in an interview. What are their top skills? What are their top selling points? What are the things that they have going for them? And so that would be the kind of thing that you would put in that summary of qualifications section. You want to use, again, some of this stuff is a little redundant here, so keeping it clean and easy, the white space. We talked about the professional paper. Again, using that checklist is a really great tool. Let's talk about some of the don'ts. These are some good ones. Don't be too wordy. Again, they're going to spend 10 to 30 seconds looking at your resume. So if there's way too much information on it, then they're not going to read it. They're going to skim it. They're going to look for those key phrases, those key words. I had a resume critique a couple years ago where it was in paragraph form, probably 5 paragraphs, and I didn't want to read any of it. So again, you just want to make it reader friendly and concise. Don't include negative information. Don't explain kind of why you got fired from your last job. You just give end dates on those positions. Again, you're not going to want to include any of that personal information. Let somebody else write your resume. I would say don't let somebody else write your resume. I mean, it's your document. You want to be able to talk to the points. Let them polish it, review it. That's what we're here for at Career Services. We'd be happy to do that because you want to be able to own it and be able to talk about the points and stuff. So if your job history is less than a year, in general, the rule of thumb for short-term employments are you can leave it off your resume. If it's less than 6 months, you really don't have to put it on there. If it's 6 months, sometimes you might be able to say like spring 2014 and kind of use the different seasons as a way to do it, or maybe it's an internship and 6 months is fine. So if it's lasted 6 to 12 months, typically you'd want to put it on there. The other ones, they can get buried, and you can start to look like a job hopper. So that would be something that you talk to a career counselor about and figure out, okay, what do I want to put on there and what do I want to leave off? Contracts, temp positions, multiple jobs with the same employer, all those kinds of things we would just try to figure out. Maybe there's a different way to highlight them. Maybe you were with the same temp company and you had different contracts, so maybe we would just look at the temp company and the dates of employment with the temp, and then you could on the bottom, Okay, so Jen is here, and this is perfect timing because this is where her perspective on some of these sticky situations, and probably one of the main reasons why I did ask her to talk about this particular topic for our webinar, because a lot of people find themselves in this situation. Do I want to highlight that 6-month job, or those couple of 1-year gigs, and how do I do that in a way where I don't look like a job hopper? So Jen, we've covered a lot of the content early on the basics of what goes on the resume and the do's and don'ts, and so now we're talking about the job history less than 1 year. And so I was just starting to tell them that, again, they don't want to look like a job hopper, but I'll let you kind of talk about your examples that you listed here.
Okay, sure. And for job history less than a year, everybody probably has those stints where something hasn't worked out, or they do have periods of time from less than a year. In general, there are a couple rule of thumbs with short-term employment. So if a job has lasted 6 months, in general, the rule of thumb is just leave it off the resume. If a job fits into your recent past, maybe it's something you've had in the last couple years, and it did last that 6 to 12 month time frame, definitely encourage you to put it on the resume. For jobs that lasted 6 to 12 months, but maybe they're further back in your past, not as relevant to the position you're applying for, then I would definitely recommend to leave them off the resume and concentrate on what's most relevant. If a job lasted at least 12 months, then I would definitely put it on the resume, especially if it's relevant to what you're going for or your direction. Okay? There's always going to be exceptions to that. There may be contracts that are short-term that you've taken in between gaps of employment or to gain your skill. There could be temp positions, or you may have even had multiple positions with the same employer, and you do want to list those out so that the new employer can see your progression. Okay? The tip just listed there that if you do have multiple short-term positions within the last 12 months and you do want to list them, I would just consider what's relevant before you list all of them. Okay?
Yeah, and I was saying that if they worked for a temp company, maybe list the temp company as the overall employer and then the positions under it, and so kind of quantifying it that way, so they wouldn't look like a job hopper.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. And now that Jen's here, I'll kind of let her take over. If you do have questions for her specifically, make sure you're typing them in that window box on the left-hand side. And she may cover some of the content that we covered, but I definitely want you guys to hear her perspective because, again, she's the one looking at your resume, not me. So I'll let Jen take over right now.
Okay. So what do you do when you have no relevant experience? Maybe you were a student looking to find a position while going to school, or maybe you are just graduating. That's where you may want to look at that functional format, or possibly even the hybrid format, which is a combination of that chronological and putting your skills and education up front. There's nothing wrong with highlighting your accomplishments, awards, experiences at the top of the resume. You definitely want to be specific. If this is the main thing that you are going to put forth in your resume to show your background, accomplishments, characteristics, then be sure that you're putting in that detail. Recruiters, hiring managers love to see those keywords to show that you had a result. That's why I listed those specific examples. Whether you received a top honors award out of 300 competing students, that shows a lot. Whether you raised $3,000 in 1 week to benefit a certain charity, you're not only showing the outcome, but you're showing what you did in that to create that outcome. So definitely encourage you to draw upon these things. You can count your school experience. If you led a project, if you were involved with the writing in the school paper or something involved on your campus, even if it's short term or a specific project, go ahead and list these as experience. And I think one thing that individuals forget is that it doesn't have to be a paid position to list it under your experience area, because all of that is still going towards who you are and the background that you have. If you're lacking content, this might be a good place to put your hobbies or your personal interest. Only thing, and you guys probably already touched base on that, the only thing is just make sure that it's relevant to what you're applying for, okay? So if you are going for, if one of your hobbies or personal interest is, something that's going to be completely unrelated, for example, just throwing it out there, if hobby or interest of yours is seeing how late you can stay out, closing down the bar, and you're applying for daycare position, probably wouldn't list it. You may be in the wrong field altogether. That's why you want to think about what is relevant. I can tell you as a recruiter, you guys probably talked about the fact that the average time frame for a recruiter to scan that resume is between 10 and 30 seconds. When you think about it, that's not a lot of time. So we're looking for keywords. We're looking for those power words. We're looking for things that are popping off that resume compared to the job that we're looking to fill. And filling in those gaps, the relevant experience, still putting something forward does count. One thing I'd encourage you to do, if you still feel that you're lacking in something to place on that resume, it is not too late to either maybe talk with your career service area, a professor, look at school experience, look at a volunteer opportunity. I know I can speak that at Parkview, we do have a volunteer area with hundreds of individuals. It's a huge hospital and we love volunteers. A volunteership or an internship can go a long way on that resume.
What do you say about job shadows? I know that you have a job shadow program
Absolutely.
at Parkview. Is that something that you would recommend putting on the resume?
I would have to say if it's relevant and you're wanting to show how you have built your interest and seriousness of going for this type of position. The job shadow, you can contact our student services. A lot of times an individual will contact the area to say, I'm thinking about going into respiratory, but I'm not exactly sure what they do. So if it's that type of experience, I wouldn't include it. If respiratory ends up being where you're going and you want to just show that progression, absolutely.
Okay, it looks like Bernadette has a question, and Jen, I'll let you read that.
Right. So Bernadette's asking, what should someone do who obtained their degree at an earlier point, and a lot of the people who supervised you no longer work at the company, and you have been out of the job market while raising your children? Okay, so a couple thoughts there. I want to start with that last comment that you've been out of the job market and you've been raising your children. That is oftentimes something that I actually see listed on the resume and or the application. And it's a great way to fill in that time frame. You've been a homemaker or you have been working inside of the home. Absolutely don't discount that experience. because I'm guessing, and I can only talk about my own experience from raising children, that you gain skill. Patience is a great skill. So think about the things that you have gained, how you have grown, your experiences as a homemaker, and don't be afraid to list that on that application or resume. As far as the first part, what should someone do to obtain their degree? 7 and a lot.
I know we recommend that after 5 years you delete the date next to your degree.
Okay.
So that way recruiters wouldn't be able to tell what year you got the degree. It's just the fact that you have the degree. And so they would know that you, since you don't have expected graduation date, that you have that specific degree. So my recommendation would be to delete that date.
Mm-hmm.
So
as far as next to the education.
Mm-hmm.
Sure, I agree with that.
Okay.
Okay. So let's talk a little bit about if you've had a bad experience or if you have experienced a termination from an employer. First thing I can tell you is be honest. A lot of times if you are not honest about that and you are employed and the employer finds out later, it's just not going to go well. I've never seen that go well. So be honest. You know, when you're putting your resume together or filling out that application, there's nothing that says that you have to add, hey, by the way, I was fired, on that resume or application. But you do need to be prepared to speak to that or explain it if you're in an interview. A couple things to think about. You know, have you improved from that particular time frame? If you were released from a position because of attendance, then show what you've done to correct that. Maybe since that time, you have been able to get a car and you're no longer riding with your roommate as your means of transportation. Or maybe there's something else that you have done for performance. Turn that negative into a positive by showing how you've improved. If you are changing direction, let's say you were working in a clerical position and realize that's not a good role for you, and you decided that you want to work more outdoors, then explain how you feel that your skills are more targeted to the new direction that you're taking. Whatever you do, definitely don't put the emphasis or place negative comments on that former employer. That is a reflection of you. Just take accountability for that, turn those negatives into positives, and move on. Okay, let's talk a little bit about employment gaps. So you definitely, here again, you want to emphasize the positives. If you've had a gap, maybe you were going to school, or maybe you were laid off and it took a while to find a position, list what you did during that time frame. Maybe you took a temp position and you feel it's not relevant because it wasn't in the field, but you can still talk about the skills that you gained, the experience. Did you volunteer during that time frame? Did you decide to go back to school? Maybe you spent more time at home with your children and what you learned from that. So again, change it into a positive. Employers know that gaps are going to happen, okay? You just want to show the employer what you did during that time frame and put a positive spin on it. For this particular area for gaps, would definitely recommend considering the years only. Just listed an example there because I know that I look at months when they're listed. So rather than listing 4/11 to 7/13 as a recruiter, and then 3/09 to 9/10, look at the example below where I've only listed the years of experience. I can't quite tell if there's a gap in there. You are not being dishonest or lying on that resume. If that recruiter wants to dig into those time frames, they will, and you can let them know at that time. At that point, you're likely on a phone screen or in an interview process with them where you're going to use these skills to bridge it together, okay? Now, when you have employment gaps in your background, you might want to consider that hybrid resume. It uses both that chronological and functional feature, listing those accomplishments, awards, education, skills at the top, and then follow it with your work history in a chronological order. So just some last thoughts, although I'm just joining you. You definitely want to know your own skills, knowledge, and abilities. We always call them KSAs. You need to know yourself in order to market yourself to someone else. You want to have a direction. You want to know what type of position that you're going to be seeking and what you're going to be applying for. Whether you do use an objective and a summary or just that summary, you want to have it sharp, concise, to the point. That is your opportunity to market. And again, keep in mind it's that 10 to 30 seconds that on average that recruiter is going to look at your information and determine if they want to take a next step with you. You need to look at your resume as your hall pass to an interview. That is your voice with the employer. So whether that means you research the company ahead of time, you're looking for that description of what that employer is looking for and turning that into your keywords, you definitely want to do that because you have the opportunity to make that happen.
Jen, what's your opinion on objective statements versus summary of qualifications? In one of your earlier slides, I went over some of the bullets that you made, but I know I typically shy away from objective statements.
Sure.
What are your thoughts? I'm sure the viewers would like to know.
You know, I would say it's really up to the individual and what they're most comfortable with, and if they feel they have relevant information to put in that objective. The summary is definitely where you want to put the meat of your, highlight your accomplishment, highlight who you are, your skill, experiences that you want them to know. 3 to 4 sentences in a summary is perfect. If you feel an objective is going to add to that, then do that. But if that's not going to add and you can use that space otherwise, then do that, absolutely.
And then what are your thoughts on LinkedIn profiles? If you see that, that heading at the top of the resume, do you guys actually go and look at those profiles or not?
Yeah, great question. I do see links to LinkedIn put in applications, especially since we have our electronic, everything is so electronic nowadays. The best thing I want to say to that is the same I would say to your email and your voicemail. Is it set up professionally that would be an advantage for an employer to click into your LinkedIn profile? We are on LinkedIn as Parkview. We have a LinkedIn career tab. We also post positions on LinkedIn. So LinkedIn is something that we use, but I will say that we don't actively go out and find LinkedIn profiles as a criteria to screen you in or out of that process. One thing to remember is if you're putting an email out there, if you're putting a link to your LinkedIn account out there, you're saying use it. So just think about whether it's professional or not. Okay. Just had a couple things listed here as we were closing out. This just goes back to using that resume checklist, or just as a quick reminder, those do's and don'ts comments and sections. Because errors is one of those top 5 things that can rule you out of a process. I know at Parkview we get upwards of about 60,000 resumes, applications a year. 200 to 300 individuals applying for one position is not uncommon. So definitely you need to ensure that errors isn't going to be something that's going to rule you out automatically. A couple things, these are actually coming off the web, but I have seen similar things. The first one always makes me smile. They're married, 8 children. They prefer to have frequent travel. I don't know if that's what they meant, but we always took it as they're ready to go. Something as simple as omitting a letter, served as assistant store manager. I know they meant store manager, but an error like that could just be enough to put it in the no pile and keep moving. Your salary requirement's only $34 per year. Hey, that's great, but I don't think that's what they were really looking for. Typing speed, 756 words per minute. I doubt that's what it's really coming in at. Probably meant 56 or 75. And a maturity leave, we probably all need one, but I'm pretty sure they meant a maternity leave. So you just want to be careful in looking at those errors. That's why I would highly recommend when you have your resume completed, give it to somebody that you know and trust, somebody that's going to give you honest feedback. You might even want to hand them that resume checklist. Say, look this over, give it back to me. I know we do that at work all the time with things, just to say, I need a second set of eyes on this before I really send it through. So I would encourage you to do that.
Okay, so I know that you might have some questions, and so Jen and I will hang here and field your questions. If you want to I think there's a feature where you can say questions to presenters only. You can do it that way. I think, Jen, you had your email address maybe on that second slide,
absolutely.
so I'll go back to that second slide. So if anybody wants to contact Jen specifically with specific questions, feel free to do that. I'm also going to, when I email out an evaluation for this webinar with the link to the recording, I will include that resume checklist that Jen created, because I think that's a really great tool to make sure that you're covering the content that you need to cover. So thank you so much for participating in the webinar today. Like I said, we'll hang tight for another 5
So just wanted to address a question back to Sherry. Question was, if you have been at your job for 10 years, how many previous jobs do you list? Couple thoughts there, Sherry. I would encourage you to look at the job description of what you are applying to. The rule of thumb out there is you do go back 10 years. I mean, that is the recommendation. But if that job description is requiring 15 years of experience, you want to be sure that you're not selling yourself short there. So I look at the job description, look at the job that you are applying to. Has your job for the last 10 years, is that type of job and skill set that's going to be relevant to what you're applying to? Or if you are looking to change direction, maybe you've done this job for 10 years, you're looking to apply to a job that is similar or maybe even a different field, then you want to tap back a little bit further if any of your other positions prior to 10 years would help show your qualifications. So does that answer your question? Great question. So if none of the previous jobs that you have held aren't relevant to what you're applying for, either leave it off, or if you want to show that you have more work history and experience behind you, I would do it in a summary, or I would just do a one-liner, such as, from my background, recruiter, Parkview, one simple line that explains my duty and the years, not months, but the years that I've been there. So if you had 3 or 4 jobs, Sherry, that you wanted them to know about, I would list it very simply like that, and then concentrate on the position that you've had for the last 10 years, pulling out your skills, pulling out those achievements, and why you're qualified for this new role that you're applying for. Hey, Cherry, thanks for your question. When do you provide letters of recommendation? I would recommend treating your letters of recommendation much like you do your reference, only from the standpoint that with our application at Parkview, our application, other than uploading the resume, doesn't allow you to attach. When we receive paper resumes, we actually don't keep those for any specific period of time. But if we're interested in talking with the individual, we'll contact them to go online and do the application. Again, you can upload that resume, but you can't upload attachments, different attachments to it. If you feel that your letter of recommendation is strong and it's something that you want that individual to know, perhaps it's something that you can comb into any type of short summary in the way of a cover letter. I know our application process does allow you to put a short summary before you have the application there that you can type in. But I'm just speaking from the standpoint of Parkview. I know that when paper documents are coming in, our recruiters know that they're just not required to keep those for any length of time frame, and we're always going to go back to that application online. So I'm going to go back to the thought process of treating it more like your reference. If you get to that next step, you might bring that letter of recommendation to the interview. If you are doing research and working to connect with the human resource individual at a particular organization you're applying for, then you may, if you connect with them, you may ask if you can send a letter of recommendation. Does that help answer that question?
Okay, sounds good. So I think we'll go ahead and end the meeting today. Thank you all for joining us. And again, you'll be getting information with an evaluation and more information about our upcoming webinars. And again, I want to thank Jen Beach for being here today and sharing information about resumes and how to make your resume stand out.
Thank you. I look forward to talking to you hopefully in the future.